It was the evening of the 2nd of February 1933 in Le Mans, France. René Lancelin was expecting his wife Léonie and their daughter Geneviève to return from shopping and meet him for dinner at a friend's home. He returned to their house, but the front door was bolted shut, and no one answered. Yet, through the window of the attic room where the two maids slept, he saw a dim light flickering. Something was wrong. Before that night, Christine Papin was born on the 8th of March, 1905, and her younger sister Léa on the 15th of September, 1911, children of Clémence Deray and Gustave Papin. Their early family life was unstable. Their parents divorced in May 1913. Christine and Léa spent time in orphanages. Christine worked as a maid from a young age. In February 1927, Christine began working as a live-in maid for the Lancelin family. Léa joined her a few months later. They lived in the attic service room and carried out their maid duties in the household of René Lancelin, his wife Léonie, and their daughter Geneviève. Over time, tensions built. Newspaper accounts and trial records show Léonie criticized Christine's cleaning, inspected dust, and was demanding. The sisters lived in silence with their employers. The gulf between them, class, speech, expectations, grew heavier by the year. Back to 2nd February 1933. That same day, Geneviève and Léonie returned home. Christine had retrieved a faulty iron from repair, plugged it in, and a fuse blew. The house was dark. Léonie, angered, criticized Christine. The argument escalated. According to Christine's later statement, she lunged first. In the chaos, Christine attacked Geneviève, removing her eyes. She then ordered Léa to do the same to Léonie. Christine went to the kitchen, collected a hammer and a knife, and together the sisters used these with whatever objects they could find, including a pewter jug, to strike and injure both victims. Their bodies bore wounds, and their faces and limbs were so badly harmed that reports say parts were unrecognizable. One of Geneviève's eyes was found under her body, another on the stairs. After René Lancelin failed to meet them, he returned home, found the bolted door, saw the light in the attic, and went to fetch the police. Officers Ragot, Vérité, and another forced entry through a rear window. They found Madame Léonie and Geneviève dead. Upstairs found Christine and Léa in bed together, apparently having washed themselves. They carried the weapons, hammer, knife, pewter jug. The sisters immediately confessed, claiming self-defense. In September 1933, the trial was held in Le Mans. The sisters were found sane, fit for trial. Christine was sentenced to death by guillotine, Léa to 10 years hard labor. Christine's death sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment in January 1934. Léa was released early in 1941 due to good behavior. Christine's mental and physical condition deteriorated in prison. Separated from Léa, she experienced depression, refused food, and in May 1937, she died in Rennes prison from cachexia, wasting away. Léa lived on under an assumed name, working as a maid in Nantes with their mother. Sources vary. Some say she died in 1982. Others report she was still alive in 2000, living in a hospice after suffering a stroke, unable to speak, partially paralyzed. But the story didn't end with legal verdicts. The Papin sisters' case became a mirror, a reflection on class tensions, domestic hierarchy, gender dynamics. Philosophers, writers, and artists took up the story. Jean Genet, Simone de Beauvoir, Jacques Lacan. They saw in Christine and Léa both sufferers and actors, people shaped by suffering whose act of violence became a kind of tragic explosion. In a quiet way, the house in Le Mans remains haunted by memory. The clean floors, the domestic rhythms, the humble kitchens, all now stages for a moment where control slipped and desperation broke through. She was a woman called Lena Baker, born in rural Georgia in 1901, one of many children. Her family worked hard, chopping cotton, cleaning, doing laundry, just to get by. Lena became a maid to care for her mother and her own 3 children. Life was full of struggle, but she was doing her best. Then she found herself working for a man named Ernest Knight, much older than her. He had broken his leg, and she cared for him, first in his home, then at his grist mill. Over time, their relationship became deeply troubled. Knight was known to be harsh, and Lena said he often controlled her, threatened her, even punished her when she tried to leave. She said he kept a pistol with him, and sometimes locked her in. Lena reached a point where she believed staying would cost her life. On the night of April 30th, 1944, Knight, drunk, reportedly forced her to go with him to the mill. Lena said she tried to stall, then hide. She said Knight cornered her again, threatened her with a bar. In fear, she grabbed his own pistol in a struggle, and the gun fired. Ernest Knight was killed. Lena turned herself in that same night, saying she acted in self-defense. Her trial came quickly, in August 1944. Lena was a black woman. The jury was all white, all male. She had a court-appointed lawyer. She was not allowed much opportunity to present witnesses on her behalf. She insisted her shooting was to save her own life, but the law at the time didn't give her much room. Within a short time, the jury found her guilty of capital murder. Her sentence, death by electrocution. On March 5, 1945, Lena Baker was executed in Georgia. She was the only woman in Georgia ever executed by electric chair. Her final words, calm and firm, were, "What I done, I did in self-defense, or I would have been killed myself. I am ready to meet my God." Decades passed. Lena's story faded from headlines, but not from the hearts of her family. In 2005, 60 years after her death, the state of Georgia granted her a full pardon, unconditional. Not because they said she was innocent, but because they acknowledged that her trial had lacked fairness, that the verdict might have been different if all facts, all voice, all protections had been present. They suggested the case might have been manslaughter rather than murder. Today, Lena Baker is remembered not just for the tragedy, but for the injustice around her case, how laws, prejudice, fear, and power shaped what happened. She remains a symbol of courage under impossible pressure, and a reminder that justice delayed is still justice that must be fought for. He hadn't meant for it to end like that. A man called Bobby Lee Harris, born in 1966, found himself standing at a terrible crossroads in the summer of 1991. He worked for a fishing business in Onslow County, North Carolina. His boss, John Redd, ran a commercial fishing operation. But for Harris, job and loyalty weren't enough to quiet the troubles in his life. Harris and another man he worked with made a plan. They spoke of robbery, not out of greed alone, but out of pressure. A tangled mix of desperation, fear of legal trouble, and the hope that running away might wash away past mistakes. They decided if they robbed their employer, maybe they could escape to Georgia. It was a thought they believed might reset their lives. On August 20th, 1991, that plan went off course. The evening was heavy with humidity. Harris grabbed a knife and spoke of tying Red up. But what unfolded was far more violent than what either man expected. Instead of restraining him, Harris stabbed John Redd 3 times in the back. The brutal moment turned tragedy when it didn't stop there. Harris later said he made Red comfortable, said help would come, but instead of help, Red was thrown into the water, alone. It would be many hours before he was found, alive enough to speak briefly to authorities, but too late to save him. He bled to death. The aftermath was a shock. Harris was arrested, tried, convicted. He was sentenced to death in 1992. But the story didn't end there. Years of appeals, of legal battles, of questioning the fairness of his sentence followed. In 2003, his death sentence was vacated. Instead, Harris was sentenced to life in prison. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars. What makes his case linger in the mind is not just the crime, but the way things spiraled. Testimony revealed that, after the stabbing, Harris had opportunities to call help, to do something to save Red, but didn't. And those moments haunt the gaps between what he planned and what he allowed to happen. Also, weighing heavily in later appeals were his background: a childhood of instability, abuse, substance struggles, the kind of life that doesn't excuse violence but offers context. Critics argued that his trial didn't allow full presentation of these mitigating factors. Red's name echoes a warning. Trust, power, and desperation can intersect in ways that escape easy judgment. Harris walked away with far more than a stolen future. He stole a life, and in doing so, forced everyone around him to ask what could have been different.